Network. First, George Michalowski here of Pittsburgh Sports Now, who covers Pitt. Ethan Bach and Joe Smeltzer will also join me to talk West Virginia and Penn State. And for any of you fans, of course, who are tuning in because you only care about one of those teams and not the others, I will clip a highlight show that'll just give you what you want after this is over as well for your digestion of just your team. But bearing with us regardless, we're going to go through the docket here. Pitt gets in the first four. Mississippi State, that team in Dayton first before getting into the real field. West Virginia has a, depending on whether you call it a rivalry or not, they have a quasi-rivalry game with Maryland. They met them not too long ago, but we'll meet them in that 8-9 matchup in Birmingham. And then in Des Moines, you have Penn State facing Texas A&M in a 10-7. So, George, to get things started, Pitt had a season, and we've talked about this now for years, that entering the season, people thought, okay, NIT, and that's probably smooth sailing. That's probably positive. That means Capel's staying. But then as the season unraveled, and whether you believe the ACC is down or not, Pitt was picking up some victories, certainly once the calendar year switched over. And after Pitt kind of got over their non-conference sluggish start, which included a loss to West Virginia, Pitt then started clipping off some victories. They were contending in conference play, and many thought, forget NIT, it's NCAA Tournament or bust right now. They looked locked in, but then they faded out of ACC contention. They obviously lost early on in the tournament, including that real bad one to Duke, who eventually went on to win the tournament. So maybe it doesn't sting as bad. And they kind of slid, forcing themselves to have to be in this first four bracket, but it counts as a tournament bid. They have to win one more game, and you could even argue that it actually puts them in a situation that maybe is more favorable than being an 8-9. But what's the reaction now? Because you were there at the Pete to absorb kind of the reaction of the team and the players, and Capel, who's been there a while, and this is certainly his best accomplishment so far at Pitt. From the Panthers, from Nelly Cummings, from this team, from Capel. It's the first four, but it's the freaking NCAA tournament. The program hadn't been there since 2016. Nelly's done it before, but that's pretty much it for right now who's with the program. So what was their reaction to the news?
Yeah, so they were definitely excited. Excited but hungry is how Jamari Burton put it. You know, they obviously talked a little bit about, and Capel got into a little bit about their resume and how they probably deserved a better seed than they got, the first four treatment. But, you know, they all kind of said, Capel said, Jamari said, Nelly said, everyone that got up there and spoke with us said, hey, we're grateful to be in this opportunity. So many people out there, so many teams out there would be dying to be in this position. So they're excited about where they're at. There's a lot of work to do. Obviously, winning one game before having to go to that first round matchup is going to be tough. It's going to add a lot to this road ahead of Pitt, and especially because this team's been banged up as of late. They haven't been playing their best basketball as of late. It's going to be a real challenge to try to win 2 games this week as opposed to 1. But, you know, I think they're very excited. You could tell Jeff Capel was, you know, not only relieved, but just really happy for his group of guys, especially for those transfers that came in. They're closing out their college careers in the tournament. You can't ask for anything more for Greg Elliott, for Jamarius, for Nike, and for Nelly. You know, it's definitely not a storybook ending yet, I'd say, but it's definitely a positive atmosphere here at Pitt right now.
Let's be honest. And obviously they want to win, and the path is there, and they could, and it would count as a tournament win if you win the first four, even though you have to get in what many would still call the legit field after that. But this is an accomplishment in and of itself for Pitt. They do have reason to be proud just off of this accomplishment, even if they somehow would get blown out in the first four, which I don't think anyone expects. And this is a bridge. This is something, regardless of what happens from here on out, to talk about the future of the program. This is what Nelly Cummings wanted to do. He wanted to bring that experience, had it at Colgate, and everybody else getting the taste of it for the first time. This is big by itself, but you did mention that there was a sigh of relief. And again, it's because they slid at the end of the year, lost to Notre Dame, the way they lost to Duke, etc., after feeling like they kind of got it once they got ranked in that top 25. Was there a sense of surprise that they were in the first four and not actually in what many would call a legit NCAA tournament? Was there more of a relief that they got in at all and that wasn't the focus? What kind of was the vibe on the surprise that, okay, it's first four, this is the matchup? Lenardi, for example, seemed to kind of project Pitt as a little bit more comfortable than the first four, even though it ends up being the first four and not having to, not in the field without having to mess with Dayton.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously don't want to be in the first four. That's not ideal for these guys, but it didn't seem like they were surprised by it. It seemed like everyone kind of knew. I mean, hey, look, you lose 3 of 4 to close out the season. You can't expect much more. Like, yeah, they got ranked. They had a great resume, great body of work, but started the season 1-3. They got over that hump, and then they ended the season 1-3. So everyone, Jamarius Burton, Nelly Cummings, Jeff Capel, they all just talked about this. They're like, hey, we knew we didn't close out the way we wanted to. We knew Duke didn't go well at all. It went very poorly. But they did think like, hey, we're in this position now. It's anyone's game. It's March. It's going to come down to having healthy bodies, being prepared, and just winning a game. No one's going to be able to have an expert scouting report on their first opponent in the NCAA tournament. These teams are playing teams they've never even looked at before. So, it's 8:00 right now, and Capel and the players just said they're going to go get their first look at Mississippi State. So it's going to be a quick turnaround, especially because they're heading out tomorrow. It's one day, one night after hearing about your opponent.
Yeah, that's a difference. There's no rest. Right. Like there's not like for teams that are playing Thursday, for example, like West Virginia, they could literally take tomorrow just off altogether, have a travel day, then maybe have practice or team meeting, and then worry about the game. Yeah, Pitt has to really rush this thing. That is a difference as well.
Definitely, and it is like you mentioned to me earlier. Dayton's close. It's not the hardest trip in the world for anyone involved, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you'd much rather have a few more days of rest. They did get bounced earlier than they thought they would have from Greensboro from the ACC tourney. So that's the one thing Burton said. He's like, well, we just got bounced way earlier than we anticipated from the ACC tournament, so we actually have been resting. So they've been going late on practices actually for pretty much this entire season. They just have not had enough depth, obviously, with John going out for the season, Will Jeffers going out for the season. It's not been a ton of healthy bodies around here. So they've been going light in practice. Capel said they went light the last 2 days, and tomorrow they're going to head out to Dayton and see where it takes them.
George Michalowski of Pittsburgh Sports Now. He's been covering this Pitt men's basketball team for years now. And you get to, I'm imagining this is your first NCAA tournament in any capacity that you're covering? Second. Okay.
I was at the one last year in Pittsburgh. Saw Houston, Loyola.
Oh, yeah. When Pittsburgh was a host, that he got you. Yeah, I've done a bunch of them at all different levels and with different schools and throughout my media career, and it's just an experience. So again, it's great. This team will get to experience it. You'll get to experience it. It isn't that bad of a drive going to Dayton. You're basically driving straight for a couple hours. It actually is a better situation than the opponent. So that maybe is something to hang your hat on. They're not driving by any means, or they're going to, risk having no break if they want to play the game. So, and obviously who knows how Pitt's going to travel, but it's not far. It could have been worse. They did slide at the end of the year. At least they could feel better about Duke because Duke went on to win the conference tournament. So maybe you got blown out to Duke, but it's behind us. And maybe Duke's better than people would have thought all year. And Duke's clicking at the best time, of course. And honestly, George, if I would have told you before the season that Ugley, who many thought, okay, you pair Nelly with John Ugley, you pair Burton, etc., with John Ugley again, and that really could be a core. You have a big, a small, a point guard. You have a true team rebounding and shooting, etc. If I would have told you that he's really not going to contribute to this team in any capacity, and yet they're going to make the NCAA tournament, even if it's the first four, I'm sure you, Capel, everybody, whether it's they're going to admit it publicly or just secretly, they would have taken it all day, no matter how they got there.
100%. I mean, it's pretty incredible to think about because I think a lot of it boils down to Federico. Obviously, he hasn't been an offensive star. He's not the guy that's going to win you a game necessarily. You can't, teams would be fine if he gets 15 points and Pitt loses. Like they were fine. He's not going to throw 30 on you. Let's just say that. So it's really interesting because we knew nothing about him, about Pitt's depth down low or anything aside from Hughley going into the season because Federico's a JUCO kid. Even the JUCO guys I talked to when he committed to Pitt were like, yeah, he's raw. I mean, it'll take him a few years to really get there and contribute there, but it's gotten to the point where he's filled in that spot really nicely, and he's given Pitt the ability to play fast and play through their guards. He gets out in transition, he runs ahead of everyone else on that court, and the amount of times we've seen Nelly Cummings, throw a pocket pass in there, throw a lob to him. It's been incredible to see the development of him. So yeah, if you told me before the season that without Hughley they would make it, I would call you crazy. I mean, we just didn't know anything. We didn't know anything about this team other than Hughley, and other than that they'd be mature and old. And they've been one of those things. They haven't had John, so it's all worked out well. Federico's been a big part. The guards have been a big part. It's really all worked out well for Pitt. I think they're all ecstatic to even be in the conversation this week, not be done with the season, to have a shot to make a run here.
Yeah, I think to say the very, very least. Mississippi State, though, is the opponent in that first four before Pitt could advance. And as I said earlier, potentially a better situation than arguably being an 8-9 once you get out of the first four, although that's easier said than done, just because an 8-9 winner is going to face a 1 seed. Mississippi State, though, imagining a team Pitt fans aren't that familiar. And obviously, Capel and this team probably aren't that familiar. They got to learn it, and they got a day and a half really to do so at best. But what can you tell me right now about Mississippi State? What do you expect out of this matchup? What does Pitt maybe need to do in particular in this matchup, either because of the matchup or because of Pitt themselves, to get out of this thing and claim a tournament win?
Right. So Pitt, since the Virginia Tech loss, hasn't looked the same offensively or defensively. Offensively, they've won games all year long with the 3 ball, with playing fast and really being an offensive powered team and being a threat. Virginia Tech took away the 3-point line from Pitt, and they looked lost. That game, Virginia Tech clearly looked like the better team than Pitt did. And since then, Pitt's really struggled to find a balance between, okay, we can make threes. We know we can make threes, but we can't get shots up from that, part of the court. As well as, okay, do we want to play inside with Burton and Federico and Hinson scoring on the inside? It's really been all kind of jumbled up recently. So that's going to be a key for Pitt. On the Mississippi State side, obviously we just were tasked with scouting them as well as the Pitt staff and everyone involved. So Tolu Smith, their leading scorer, 6'11", 245 pounds. He's going to be a handful down low for Pitt. I mean, they just do not have much depth down low. As much as we praised Federico earlier on in the show, it's really tough for them because, behind Federico, it's the Diaz-Graham twins. And those guys are not very strong yet. I mean, they're early in their career, so they're going to have their hands full with the plus rebounder, a plus scorer down low. They've got some good, Mississippi State's got some good transfer guards and wings as well, DJ Jeffrey, Shaquille Moore. But they're really not a good 3-point shooting team. They shoot 26% from beyond the arc as a team. So they're not really going to pose a huge threat to Pitt offensively. I think this is a game, at least when you play a team that averages 65 points a game, that's 10 less than Pitt per game. When you play a team like that, like Pitt has room for errors. They have room for mistakes. They have room to come back, and they have room to pounce on a team like that. So should be an interesting matchup for Pitt, but I'm looking forward to the matchup down low, seeing how Federico fares, especially because Capel said he was a little banged up the other day last week. So should be a good one.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Now, I think I saw Pitt 2.5-point favor. Is that right? I looked at that quote.
I did not see a spread yet.
Okay, yeah, I thought I saw one. I saw one real quick, but that maybe not. But again, talking to George Michalowski, your Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pitt does make the NCAA tournament, first time since 2016. Again, it's been a while, especially with what the Pitt program established prior to that and the run with Ben Howe and Jamie Dixon. It's been a tough road for Pitt fans. So again, first four, but a favorable matchup in the first four, it certainly sounds like. If you get out of the first four, I'll kind of close up shop on our Pitt talk kind of with this. If you get out of the first four, as I mentioned, there's a glass half full take that exists of having to be in the first four, even though it's kind of insulting in general, because it counts as an NCAA tournament win and getting in. You could put it on a banner if you want, but you'd rather obviously be in the field and get a seed line than this. It does kind of have the committee tell you and your fans and your program that you're in, but if we were doing it years ago, or if we had, you're barely in, and we need to kind of see more from you to really feel you have a right for a championship run. So you're in this first four, but if you get out of it, then you're right with everybody else, just on a little bit less rest. And then it all fares up again. And maybe you're actually in a better situation because you avoid the 1 seed. So if Pitt would win against Mississippi State and get out of the first four, what are your thoughts on the rest of the path potentially for the Panthers? And upsets can always happen, but knowing this Pitt team, knowing how they're playing now and how they're built, can they actually make a run through March? There have been first four teams before that have made runs through March outside of just the first four. So this is not impossible. In fact, it's happened frequently, and it might be insulting now, but once you get out of that game, you might actually be in a better situation than teams that actually got in avoiding the first four.
Right. I mean, I think there's definitely possible for them to make a run. Iowa State would be next if we're going to look ahead. People were asking Blake Hinton, former Iowa State player, what his thoughts were about a potential matchup between the two. He was like, I'm focused on Mississippi
Right.
State, man. Come on.
Right.
So it is easy to look ahead, though. So, you obviously look at the bracket. Iowa State will be next. Down in Greensboro, again, they'd be back there. Probably staying in the same hotel. I guess that could add some comfort for you.
Right.
I think they match up all right against Iowa State. Don't know too much about the Cyclones there. I know they just lost Caleb Grill, left the team. So Xavier would be next, most likely, unless Kennesaw State, keeps the magic rolling. Penn State, Texas, Colgate, all those teams are in the region. Penn State, Pitt, potential Elite Eight matchup would be
that would be pretty cool.
Very interesting. Yeah,
right.
that would be interesting. But overall, I mean, I think you look at the Midwest, and obviously Houston's in there, Auburn, Miami's up there, Indiana has got a tough matchup with Drake. But you look at the bracket that Pitt's in, and it's not. I don't think anyone's reaction is like, okay, no way they're going to win more than one game. No way they're going to win more than one game out of the first four. So I think they've got a shot to make a run. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, all comes down to the first four, and we'll see on Tuesday here.
Yeah, and you imagine they're probably not going to be favored in any more games outside of the first four, but Iowa State, I think potentially could be a favorable matchup for Pitt. I'll just say that's a situation that Pitt can pull from a familiar opponent. It's been a while, but they played West Virginia, who obviously is familiar with Iowa State in the Big 12. And anyone around Pitt, because this has been talked about all year, that felt like maybe they were getting snubbed with NAT rankings and computer rankings because it's not their fault. The ACC doesn't have North Carolina like it normally does, and Duke was sluggish earlier in the season, etc. The ACC felt they were disrespected this year, and the Big 12 got all the love and all the teams in the tournament and all the rankings, and it's a tougher schedule. I think it was, but if they don't agree, they can kind of prove the point because they're going to play a Big 12 team, and it's going to be Iowa State, who West Virginia did beat, but they lost to West Virginia and say they're much better than they were earlier in the season. If they go there and beat Iowa State, they're kind of proving a lot of what they were saying. If they go out there and get killed by Iowa State, maybe they didn't prove what they were saying, and that was right. So this actually, if you're a Pitt fan and if you're a Pitt player and a coach, you got to be excited. You don't want to be in the first four, but you avoid the 1 seed. You get a chance to kind of talk some smack and prove what you were saying all year if you beat a Big 12 team. And then after that, it is house money from then on. So, so Pitt gets in its first four. They then have a chance at a Big 12 team afterwards. And then who knows from there? George Michalowski, appreciate the time, man. We'll have him as well as the rest of our crew back on the end of this show to kind of give some picks. You'll get another 20 minutes or so to look at your bracket there. Obviously, these teams are still trying to digest what's happened, but first time since 2016. It's the first four. It's not that far of a drive. Not much to complain about if you're a Pitt fan right now.
Looking forward to it, Mike. I'll be back on shortly.
Absolutely. Again, George Michalowski of Pittsburgh Sports Now.